Because the one thing I can tell you is your brain is a how-making machine. If you give it a context to work in, it will find a way. Okay? All we're doing is redirecting our attention there. So the first habit I'd like to begin to unpack before we go to lunch is to maximize mental resources. How do we get the most out of our brain and the brains of those that we're interacting with, those that we're leading? And so I am going to cover some of the basic neuroscience that David touched upon. We're going to look at two regions specifically, your prefrontal cortex and your limbic system, and the relationship between the two, so that we can manage our state and choose better feeling thoughts moment to moment. So meeting our brain a little bit more intimately, if you put your hand on your forehead, you are covering your prefrontal cortex. So it is the last part of the brain to evolve. It's what separates us from other mammals. It's only a few business cards thick. And it's where our executive function resides. So it's got a fairly important job to do. Here's the functions that Goldilocks performs. Now, Amy Arnston from Yale University gave this part of the brain the nickname Goldilocks because conditions have to be just right in order for it to be working well. So it needs just the right amount of oxygen, just the right amount of glucose, just the right amount of sleep, just the right amount of neurochemistry, just enough adrenaline so I'm focused and paying attention, but not too much, no cortisol in the mix whatsoever. So it's very fussy. So System 1 thinking is our fast, intuitive gut instinct. System 2 is where we do the consequential thinking, the analysis. So self-regulation, 0.02 of a second to say, no, I don't think that's a good idea, I'm going to override that. This part of the brain, and particularly the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, so on the side. It's one of the higher order functions that does develop in our mid-20s. Okay, it's one of the last things to come online. So we spend a lot of time every day making decisions, understanding, committing things to memory, working on things, recalling and inhibiting, don't we? Interesting limitation with the prefrontal cortex that I want to share with you. It's a serial processor. It works on one thing at a time, navigate these days. So the executive function is energy intensive. It takes a lot of glucose and oxygen to operate this region of the brain. It's a serial processor. It's quite small in processing capacity. In David's example, he said it's like having a cubic meter versus the entire Milky Way. So when we access the whole brain's resources, we have far greater capacity, processing capacity to work with. That's what we need to be tapping into. But we need to create the conditions in the brain to tap into that.